All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let's begin today's daf. Today's daf is Kuf Chaf Aleph, 121. And we are picking up on 121. Kuf Chaf Aleph, second line down. So let's remember again, we're still going through the list of the Mishnah, focusing on the various items which combine with meat for the purposes of Hilchos Tumah. So we're just going through this. V'ha'alal, says the Gemara, ultimately again, alal combines with meat. Excellent. Says the Gemara, my alal. So what is alal? So the Gemara is Rabbi Yochanan Amar Bosa Machlokes. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Martika. What's a martika? Rashi says, tap Rashi, Kuf Chafal from the Aleph, Gid HaShedra V'atzabar V'urachav V'lavan V'kashem Ha'od V'koren also Yibum. So we'll say, so this is a nerve or a sinew in the spinal cord in the neck. It is wide, it is white, it is hard, and therefore again we're going to see inedible. So this is the martika. So we'll say therefore against Rabbi Yochanan says the martika could combine ultimately again to form the shear of the meat for tumah purposes. Reish Lakish says basar shapaltaso sakin. Reish Lakish says no, it refers the martika the alo refers to the meat that literally again is expelled by the knife. Now we'll say, now what does that mean? Look at Rashi. Basar shapaltaso sakin. Sometimes when you flay the animal, you remove the hide from the animal. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. So when you go ahead and you remove the hide from the animal, so the hide doesn't necessarily come clean off. Sometimes there are parts of the flesh which are removed with the hide itself. So therefore, again, Abu Say Rish Lakish suggests that alal are those pieces of meat, those pieces of flesh, they get removed from the hide. So we'll say, so just understand what's happening over here. So what the Mishnah is teaching me is that the alal combines together with the alal combines together with meat for purposes of Hilchos Tumah. What's the definition of alal? Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan martika, it is this sinew, right? This sinew in the spinal cord / neck, this gid in the spinal cord / neck. Reish Lakish saying it's the flesh ultimately again that is pulled away together with the hide. So the Gemara says, Meisvei, let's raise the cash on this. So we'll say the Gemara now quotes over here the pasuk from Eov. So Eov is giving Musar to his friends. V'ulam atem tofle sheker. So Eov says to his friends, and you are literally peddlers or merchants, collectors of falsehoods. Rofe elil kulchem. Literally, again, you are the healers of Elil, all of you. Now, what does that mean? Look at Rashi. V'ulam atem tofle sheker. Eov amar lechavero mechabre divrei sheker atem. So Eov got upset at his friends, and he said to them, "You are the compilers of falsehoods. V'davar she'in bo refuah atem omer lerefuasi." And something that cannot be healed, you are trying to heal in me. Supposed to now watch this. So remember again, this is referring to when Eov suffers all of his losses and his friends show up and try to give him insights and meaning into his losses. He tells them essentially, you are collectors, you're peddlers of falsehood, and you're trying to heal something which cannot be healed. Now for our purposes, what does he call them? He calls them Rofe Elil. Right, Rofil Alil. First of all, say Rofe Alil is something. So he's saying you are healers of Alil, which is saying Alil is something that cannot be healed. Now watch this. So we'll say, according to the opinion who says that ultimately the alil is the martika, refers to this sinew in the neck, in the spinal cord. So hainu delav barafuhu. They both say that makes sense that cannot be healed. Apparently, once that gid is broken or is snapped, it cannot be healed. So the Gemara says, but yet again, according to the opinion who says that alil ultimately refers to what? To flesh that is pulled away together with the hide, that can be healed. Rashi points out that sometimes when flesh is torn away from the animal and it is reattached, so sometimes, again, it could re-heal together with the rest of the animal. So if Eov is telling his friends, you are healers of alil, or alal, and alal cannot be healed, that makes sense if we use the definition of martika, but doesn't make sense if we go with the definition of the flesh that is cut away with the hide. The martika cannot heal. The flesh that is pulled away with the hide can heal, to which the Gemara says, you're right. So we'll say, so the truth is, in the pasuk in Eov, everyone agrees that alal means what? Alal means the flesh that comes away with the hide. That's what everyone agrees with. So pliki, we'll say, where's their machlokes? Ba'alal demas nisin. In Achinami, you're right. The machlokes over here is the alal of the Mishnah. What does the alal of the Mishnah mean? Does the alal of the Mishnah mean martika? Does the alal of the Mishnah ultimately mean basar shapataso sakin? That's where there is a machlokes. Good. So we'll say so the Gemara so far ends off fundamental machlokes. Beautiful. So where it goes back to Tashma. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ha'alal hamachunas. If you have literally collected alal, if you took a bunch of alal and you collected it, if there's a kezais of alal in one place, chayavin alav, you'll be chayiv for that. Rashi says chayavin alav mishum nevela bein sheochlo bein shenogea bo v'nichnas lemikdash. Fine. So we'll say so. Ultimately, again, if you have a kezais of alal and you consume it, you'll be chayiv because of nevela. Vam Ravuna v'hu shekinsu. And Rav Huna says, but this is only assuming that what? That a person actively gathered this alal together. Because the act of gathering the alal together, Rashi says, is achsheveh. By actively gathering it together, you have gone ahead and what? You have endowed it with importance. In other words, alal by itself, apparently, is not chashuv. Because it's not chashuv, it's not mitztarif. But if you actively gather it together, that means you are endowing it with a chashivus. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, it has the status. It will combine for tumas for the velo. So we'll say, according to the opinion who says that alal refers to the flesh pulled away with the hide. So I understand, therefore, again, what the Bryce is saying. If there's a kezayis, if you gather together a kezayis of this flesh, then einachinami, again, it could combine for nevela purposes. El mandar martika. But if you say that the alal is a martika, is the sinew of the neck, then what? Ki'ika kizayis maihavi. We'll say, even if there's a kizayis of this neck sinew, what does it matter? Eitz ba'almuhu. Rabbi say, this is not food, right? That's sinew. That's, in other words, Rabbi say, it's one thing to say that the martika could combine with basar to form a shir of kizayis. Okay, because I understand essentially the theme of the Mishnah is even items which are not completely food items on their own could combine with food in order to go ahead, an ochel to form a requisite shir. But to say that I would have a kizayis of martika, and somehow again that's going to make me chayiv for nevela, martika is really an inedible substance. So what's the pshat? To which the Gemara says, Alibud Rabbi Yehuda lo pligi. To which the Gemara says, you're right. In accordance with Rabbi Yehuda, we're not arguing. Right? We'll say, in Rabbi Yehuda's model, obviously, it's clear that halacha lemaisa, that the alal hamuchunas has to be talking about the basar and not the martika. Ki pligi. So we'll say, so where does the machlokes come up with, or come up according to? Aliba de Rabbanan. Only according to the Rabbanan. Okay, so the Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, martika nami mitztarif. So Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even martika, even the sinew in the neck has the ability to go ahead and be mitztarif and combine together with other food items for the shear for a shear. Reish Lakish Amar, dafka basar shepaltaso sakin. Reish Lakish says, no, it is only the flesh that is collected together with the hide. Aval martika lo mitztarif. I will say martika itself cannot combine with basar to form a shear. So the Gemara says, so let's analyze this. Okay, so we'll say, so here's the good news. Let's talk about the good news. What's the good news? Everyone agrees that what? Everyone seems to agree that Allah Chalamaisa, basar shapal taso sakin, which means that if you were to go ahead and take off the hide of the animal, you cut the hide away with a knife, right? Inevitably, when you cut the hide away, what comes along with the hide? Pieces of flesh. Now what we seem to be saying is those pieces of flesh can combine with other basar in order to create the shear, in the Mishnah's case, for tumas nevela. Fine. Let's get the machlokes is regarding martika, but everyone agrees. So let's analyze this. The Gemara says, Heichi dami. What's the case? Hai basar shapataso sakin heichi dami. What's the case? Id chashav alei. And we'll say, if ultimately again you endow we'll call it the flesh scrapings, right? If you endow the pieces of flesh that come apart with the hide with chashivos, in other words, you have in mind that they're chashiv, then afilu ba'an pei nafshim etame. Then I will say, ultimately, again, they should have an identity of nevela, even independent. It's not just about being mistarif, We'll say that even independently, they should have a din of basar. V'idalo chashiv alei, and if ultimately, again, you're not machshiv, right? You do not have in mind that they should be anything important, then what? Bitule batle. Then ultimately, again, that flesh which comes away with the hide is batal. So which one is this? Rabbi says, now what we're asking over here is even halacha l'maisa, in basar shapatas or sakin. So you will say, if we take martika off the table for just a moment, and understand martika is subject to dispute. Is it mitzarif? Is it not mitzarif? But yeah, when it comes to basar shapatas or sakin, everyone seems to be saying that it is mitzarif, right? That flesh that comes away with the hide is mitzarif with other basar for tumah purposes. Okay, what's the case? If it's achshave, we'll say achshave means you have in mind that this is a usable substance, then ultimately, again, not only is that basar able to combine with other pieces of meat, but that meat, that flesh, that basar stands on its own with a chashivos. In other words, it doesn't have chashivos just because it combines with something. It has a chashivos on its own as well. So what's the case? The Gemara says, and if you're not machshivit, it's batal. So Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Maisha, it's both saying, Rabbi Avin and Rabbi Maisha both say, Chad Amar, Miktsaso Chishav Alav, V'chad Amar, Miktsaso Paltaso Chaya, or Miktsaso Palto Sakin. So we'll say, watch this. Very interesting. So two different resolutions. One says Miktsaso Chash. And I'll say, if you look at Rashi, this is the first wide line in Rashi. Miktsaso Chishev Alav, V'lo Pirish Ezektsah. So we'll say, listen to this. So what happens over here? I'm separating a hide with my knife. If some pieces of flesh come away with that hide, what happens? I have in mind that ultimately, again, I have in mind that I'm going to use, or that some of these pieces of flesh are chashiv, but I don't identify which pieces I'm achshiv and which piece are machshiv and which pieces I'm not. So Rashi says, "V'lo pirish." First by line in Rashi, "Mitzas chishav alav." V'lo pirish ezek tzas hilchach kibetz minei lo mekabel tuma. The halo chishav akulo. Aval ki mitzarif bahadi shar ochlin mitzarif uktzas machshava de ispe lashum shir. Let's listen to this. So because I was not machshiv the entire amount, therefore again, a kabetz of that flesh by itself will not be metame, but because there is a quasi machshava, therefore what? It's good enough to go ahead and combine with another food item to fill out the requisite shear. So we'll say, so the first answer essentially says that the basar shapaltaso sakin is a case where I have in mind that, you know what, some of this is meat, I have in mind some of it's not meat, or I have in mind about some of it is meat, I don't have in mind for the rest of it, I don't identify which part I'm machshiv, which part I'm not machshiv. So by itself, it cannot go ahead and form a comprehensive chashiv unit. But it can combine with other meat, with other flesh, ultimately to fill out the shear. That's the first opinion. The Chadamar, other opinion said, Miktsaso paltaso chaya or Miktsaso paltaso sakin. This is very interesting. Other opinions, so we're dealing with what kind of animal? Look at Rashi, second white line Rashi, paltaso chaya. No, we're dealing with an animal that noshcha kela v'dildo min abasar letzad ha'ar. So I'll say you have an animal that was bitten by a dog, right? And some of the flesh became detached as a result of that dog bite. And what happened? Meaning it's still hanging on the animal, but it's a bit detached. Then afterwards you shechted the animal, and you're flaying the hide, and some of the flesh comes off with the hide. And what happens? And I don't know, now at which point in time, I don't know which part of the flesh became detached because of the attack from the other animal, and which part of the flesh, meaning there's two different areas of flesh that are hanging onto the hide. One part is a result of the animal bite, and one part is a result of the sakin, but I don't know which is which. So we'll say in general, a person would still have in mind to eat the flesh, even though it was bitten by another animal. But the stuff, the meat shavings, the flesh shavings that come in with the hide, a person often does not eat. But I can't identify which is which. So therefore, I will say in this kind of case, that flesh ultimately, again, cannot go ahead on its own, form a shear of chashivos. But it can go ahead and combine with other flesh, ultimately to round out the Shir for Tumah. Both said the common denominator between these two examples over here are situations where essentially the flesh in question, right, does not have enough of an independent chashivos to go ahead and form its own comprehensive unit of tumah. So the only thing it can do is, but yet it's endowed with a bit of chashivos. So because of that, again, it has the ability to combine with something else, which is chashav. That's the case that the Gemara is driving at over here. Tanan Hasam. Here we go. We'll say additional cases. Hachartum, the beak of an animal. Hatsi pornayim, the claws. Mitamin, umitztarfim. So we'll say, so the beak of the animal, the claws of the animal. So ultimately, again, they become tameh, and they can convey tumah. Umitztarfin, and they could combine with other flesh to form a shear for tumah as well. To which the Gemara says, Chartum, the beak. What good is the beak? Eitz ba'almahu. We'll say the beak is not flesh. The beak is hard, right? This eitz, the Gemara says, it's eitz ba'almahu. It's like a piece of wood. Amar Rabbi Lazar, bechartum tachtom. It's talking about the lower beak. Okay, tachton nami eitz ba'almahu. That's fine. The lower beak is also hard, right? The lower beak is also just like eitz. So Amar Papa, tachton shel elyon. It means the bottom of the upper beak. So apparently the bottom of the upper beak is a bit softer than the rest of the beak, and therefore again can be consumed. Tzipar nayim. What about the claws? We'll say same thing. Aren't the claws hard to eat? Aren't the claws meaning pretty much inedible? Rabbi Lazar, makom hamuvlan bebasar. We're talking about over here actually the part of the claws that's absorbed in the flesh. That part of the claws that goes into the flesh ultimately is a bit softer and therefore again edible. Amar Papa, karnayim. What about the horns? Amar Papa, makom shechot dam. So where the horns are embedded in the head, where if you cut them, they will bleed, right? And therefore, again, I will say that's a softer part of the horns, and therefore can be consumed as well. Good. I will say now the Gemara gets into a very interesting sugya. So if you remember again, just to read you the Mishnah was Hashochet behema tamea le'oved kochavim umevarchases. We'll say listen to this case very carefully. A Jew shechts a behema tamea. So listen to this. A Jew is shechting a non-kosher animal to be consumed by a non-Jew. Okay? Now watch this. Umevarchases. And the animal is convulsing, right? Pirkos. So what's that? What's the status? Metame tumas ochlin, avalo tumas nevelos ad shetamos. So we'll say in that state where the animal has been shechted and is convulsing, the animal is metame tumas ochlin, but not tumas nevelos, which tells me what Rabbi say. Once you shecht an animal, even a non-kosher one, what's the status of the animal? What's the status of the animal? It's dead. It's dead. Therefore, what? Or I should say differently. Let me take that back. Right? It's metame tumas ochlin. It has the ability to go ahead and get tumas ochlin, which I will say on one hand tells me that what shchita does is shchita transforms an animal into a piece of meat. So once you shecht it, ultimately again, it is food, and therefore ultimately can contract tumas ochlin. Yet, because it's mifarchasas, because it's convulsing, it's not totally what? It's not totally dead. Because it's not totally dead, therefore what? It does not contract tumas nevelos. Hear this interesting case? So I'll say this is a good trivia case. When can you eat an animal that is not fully dead? Well, you could figure out a phrase. It didn't come out right, but understand. You'll figure out the verbiage. I'll say, but it's an incredible idea. So now you have a Jew, and again the case is very specific. You have a Jew shechting a non-kosher animal for an akum. The act of shchita renders an animal into ochel. Because it renders an animal into ochel, therefore that animal is subject to tumas ochlin. But because it's still mefarcheshes, because it's still convulsing, it's not totally dead. Now obviously it's dead enough, right? How do I know it's dead enough, Rabbi? Because remember again, the Isra Avram and Achai applies also to who? To Bnei Noach. So remember again, a non-Jew can't eat Avram and Achai as well. So it's dead enough to eat it, but yet it's not dead enough to get tumas nevelas. Incredible case. So let's go. The Gemara says, Rabbi Asi. Shonin, we learned, Yisrael b'tmeva ovi kochav b'tehora tzrichin machshava. So I will say, whether it's a Yisrael shechting a behema tmea, or an akum shechting a behema tahora. So we'll say this would be an akum shechting a kosher animal for a Jew. It's two cases, right? It's a Jew shechting a non-kosher animal for a Jew shechting a non-kosher animal for an akum, or an akum shechting a kosher animal for a Jew. In both of these cases, tzrichin machshava. Ultimately, again, let's focus on the Jew for non-Jew case, requires machshava, that ultimately, again, this animal is going to be consumed by a non-Jew. The hechsher mayim mimakom acher. And not only that, but ultimately, again, in order to be makabel tumas ochlim, both of these cases, the animal has to come in contact with liquid in order to make it receptive to tumah. Says the Gemara, we're going to analyze this second part specifically. Hechsher, why does the animal have to come in contact to make it huchshal kabel tumah? So the Gemara says, Lamali, sofale tami tumah chamura. Ultimately, again, this animal is destined to contract tumah chamura. Both say, what tumah chamura is it destined to contract? Tumas nevela. The chosha sofo, the tami tumah chamura l'boy hechsher. And what we know the halacha is that any animal that is ultimately going to contract a heightened form of tumah does not require any type of hechsher. Hechsher means a preparatory act which makes it receptive to tumah. If something is ultimately going to take on a strong form of tumah, hechsher is not required. Where do we know that from? The Tan Rabbi Shmuel, v'chiyutan mayim azera. We'll say the pasuk says, if water will come upon seeds, this is the pasuk that teaches us the concept that in order to receive tumah, something has to be huchshal l'kabel tumah. So the Gemara says, Mazram shein sofa l'tamei tumah chamura tzrichin hechsher. Seeds, which are ultimately again not going to contract tumah chamura, require hechsher. Af kol shein sofa l'tamei tumah chamura tzricha hechsher. So to Rabbi say, any item which is ultimately going so to anything which is ultimately not going to contract a high form of tumah does not require hechsher. V'tanya am Rabbi Yossi mipnei ma amru nevelas oftar tzricha machshava netzricha hechsher. Why is it that nevelas oftar, the nevela of a kosher bird, requires machshava? Right, it requires machshava. Ultimately, again, both say requires machshava means that you have to have in mind to eat it, right? But yet doesn't require hechsher. Amud beis mipnei shesofa l'tamei tumei chamura. Because it will say, since it is ultimately going to contract a heightened form of tumah, therefore, again, it does not require hechsher. So we'll say, so ultimately, again, back to our question, so why is it over here? Why is it over here in this particular case, where ultimately, again, you're telling me that a Jew is shechting a non-kosher animal for an akum, that in order that it requires machshava and hechsher. Why does it require hechsher? Why does it require contact with the liquid in order to become tamei? This is sofo lekabel tumah chamura. This ultimately is going to contract a heightened level of tumah. Namely, it's going to become an avela. So when it's going to become an avela, at what point in time does it contract tumas avela? When it stops convulsing, right? So ultimately, again, anything that is ultimately going to contract a heightened form of tumah does not need hechsher. So what's the answer? So this is actually very interesting. So Chizkiah says, we'll say there is the possibility of avoidance of tumas nevela. How can you avoid tumas nevela? If you were to scrape every piece of flesh off of the bones of this animal, to the point that ultimately, again, there was less than a kezayis on the bones of the animal will not contract tumas nevela. In other words, if you were to make sure that there was less than a kezayis of basar on the bones, it would not contract tumas nevela. So we'll say, okay, the chances of doing that before the animal stops convulsing, quite minimal. But nevertheless, I guess, possible. So Chizkiah says, because there is the ability, technically speaking, to circumvent the tumas nevela, therefore, again, we'll say, so essentially what Chizkiah is saying is like this: when does an item not require hechsher? Only when it will certainly contract tumah chamura. But in a case where the tumah chamura is not absolute, or you could avoid it, like in this case over here, halacha l'maisa, it requires hechsher. So the Gemara is like this: Amrli Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera, Umi Amar Chizkiah Hachi. Did Chizkiah really say this? We'll say, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, it's Rashi right across from Gil Yonah Shas. Umi Amar Chizkiah Hachi, Almost spherically the Chizkiah hadis nan de in Tumas nevelos b'mparchesas. So both say one thing that is coming out from Chizkiah is as follows, which is that ultimately again Tumas nevela does not devolve upon an animal that is mefarchesas. So both say understand this is like it's shocking. It's mamish shocking. Hence the deafening silence, right? It's mamish shocking. So remember again, because understand what we're just learning over here, which is I just focus on one specific case. I have a Jew who's shechting a non-kosher animal for an akum. So understand what we're saying over here. So when I shechted, we'll say let's analyze the steps. When you shecht an animal, what just happened? You've transformed an animal into food. Okay? So step one now is the animal has become food. Because it's become food, therefore, again, it's mekabel tumas ochlin. That's step one. Yet, what the Mishnah tells you is something amazing. I would have thought, in order to be food, you have to be what? Dead. Right? In order to be food, you have to be dead. Yet, apparently, in halacha, there is the concept to be food, but yet not be dead. Now, we'll say why? Because as long as the Mishnah says, as long as the animal is mefarchesas, it's not mekabel tumas nevelos. Tumas nevela only comes apparently after the pirkos, after the convulsions are done. So the Gemara says, now Chizkiah is subscribing to that concept as well. Chizkiah says, as long as the animal is convulsing, it is not mekabel tumas nevela, only tumas ochlin. So the Gemara is saying, does Chizkiah really hold that way? But we learned, shachat b'shnayim orov shnayim b'aydanim mefarchesas. If you shechted, I will say just a good old case of shechita. You shechted an animal, you shechted two simanim. It's a little bit of a throwback to our old Chullin days. You shechted two simanim, or the majority of two simanim, v'aydanim mefarcheses, and the animal is still convulsing. So what's the halacha? Chizkiah amar eino le'ivarim. Chizkiah says there is no longer a din of Eivra min achai. Rabbi says this is very important, because what does that tell me if there's no longer a din of Eivra min achai? It's dead. And if it's dead, then it should be subject to what? Tumas nevela. So the Gemara says, now again, both say, remember again, this is by a kosher animal, right? So there's no Isser nevela by a kosher animal, but by a non-kosher, okay, fine. So we'll say, but for our purposes, again, what this is showing is, once the shechita is done, Chizkiah seems to be of the opinion the animal is dead. The animal is dead, convulsing or not convulsing, the animal is dead. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, yesh na'ayram. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the animal ultimately, again, is subject to Eivra min achai. Chizkiah says, Chizkiah Amar Eino le'ivarim. Chizkiah says that's subject to Eivra min achai. Why not? Meisahi, because once you shecht the animal, will say shchita is death. Shchita is death. That's it. Rabbi Yochanan yesh le'ivarim lav meisi. Rabbi Yochanan says no. As long as the animal is convulsing, halacha l'maisig, and the animal is not dead. Rabbi say fundamental machlokas. So ultimately, again, this is the kasha. Chizkiah just was on record as saying before that when you shecht the animal, you've made it into food, but as long as it is convulsing, it's not dead. Yet, Chizkiah says explicitly over here that once you do shechita on an animal, the animal is dead. Now, both say, now, obviously, the Gemara, the price that the Gemara just quoted over here is not talking about Tuma, it's talking about Achila. Chizkiah is saying ultimately, again, once you shecht the animal, it is no longer subject to Eivra min achai. The only way not to be subject to Eivra min achai is what? Is if you're dead. In other words, you can't be a little dead, right? You can't be partially dead, right? You're dead or you're not dead. So ultimately, Chizkiah is on record as saying that once you do shechita, the animal is dead. How does that stem with what we just said before? That Chizkiah said that when the animal is mefarcheses, when it's convulsing, it's not mekabel tumas nevelos. To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you. Amrlei, Chizkiah will tell you. Yatzasa michlal chaya ulichlal mesa lo basa. So I'll say this is what we said before. Chizkiah says, we'll say this is an incredible chiddush. It is no longer alive, but it's not dead. Right? It's only Jews could say stuff like this, right? Right? It's no longer alive, but it's not dead. Nishtahin, nishtaher, right? It's in the middle. So as I say, actually, this is an incredible halachic classification. So ultimately, what Chizkiah is saying is like this. In order to go ahead, so I'll say, if you really fine-tune this, what Chizkiah is really saying is like this. In order to consume an animal, it's not allowed to be what? Alive. This is amazing. Chizkiah is saying is ultimately, again, the permit for consumption is not that the animal be dead. It's just that it's not alive. Same thing with Eivra min achai. Eivra min achai means that what? That ultimately, again, you can't take a living from something that's alive. So as long as it's halachically not alive, ultimately, again, it's okay. Now, being not alive is not necessarily the same criteria as being, it's clear according to Chizkiah, the definition of death, Rabbi Osai, means the cessation of all movement, right? That's the legal definition of death. Therefore, in Chizkiah's world, you could have an animal that is not alive but is not yet dead, which I will say happens very often. The animal is no longer alive, but it is still convulsing. Therefore, in Chizkiah's worldview, essentially, again, what you have is once you shecht it, you're good. You could eat it. Because I will say, the halacha doesn't let me have to eat a dead animal. The halacha tells me I'm not allowed to eat a live animal. The animal is no longer alive. Ever min achai, I can't take it from a living animal. This animal is no longer living. But the animal is not yet halachically dead until it stops convulsing, which is why ultimately, again, Tumas Nevela will not devolve upon the animal ultimately until what? Until that animal stops moving. We'll say that's, on the other hand, Rabbi Yochanan will say incorrect. There's either alive or there's dead. There's two states. There's nothing in between. Therefore, again, Rabbi Yochanan, now, again, interestingly enough, Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Chizkiah's definition, I will say, and he'll say that ultimately what? There's alive and there's dead. Dead is when all movement stops. That's why you can't eat and you can't take an Eber until after convulsions end. That's the Shita of Chizkiah. Dramatically amazing Shita. Gufa. Both sides analyze this. I told you, amazing, no? Incredible. So Shachat Bashnaim Rav Shnayim, thank you. Right, Shachat Bashnaim Rav Shnayim. So say if you go ahead and you shecht two simanim, or the majority of two simanim, by dain he mifarchases, but the animal ultimately again is still moving. Therefore, what I will say? So the Gemara says, and we'll say, by the way, you understand the incredible Musar in this, in Chizkiah's model? You understand this incredible Musar? I will say the incredible Musar is Chizkiah saying, there's a state in life where you're not alive. Right, I should say you're not dead, but you're also not alive. Right, you're in like this gray area where on one hand you're not dead, but you're not doing anything. Right, I'm not living. Right, and this is see, I say in the other models, you're either alive or you're dead. Okay, Baruch Hashem, I'm not dead, I'm alive. Chizkiah says no, Nebuch. There's this whole gray area, and this whole gray area where I'm not dead. But also, again, I'm not maximizing my potential in a dynamic living sense as well. Incredible Musar. So goes right. The Shachat Bashnaim Rav Shnayim. A person shechs two simanim, the majority of two simanim. Vaydain he mefarchesas. And I will say the animal is still convulsing. So just going back and restating what we were saying before. Okay. So Chizkiah Amar Einam Leibarim. So Chizkiah says there is no Isser Eivrim in Achai in that case, which we just said before. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Yeshna Leibarim. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, there is Eivrim in Achai. There's absolutely Eivrim in Achai in that case. Amar Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Lazar says, Nakut Laha Rabbi Yochanan Biyadcha. The truth is, you should take Rabbi Yochanan's position in your hands. Why? The Tani Rabbi Oshia Kavase. Because Rabbi Oshia holds like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Oshia, remember again, Shitas Rabbi Yochanan is that while the animal is convulsing, Rabbi Yochanan understands convulsions are life. Right? While the animal is convulsing, ultimately the animal is alive, and therefore Allah Lamaisa subject to Eivrim min Achai. So ultimately says Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Yochanan Sketra, Rabbi Oshia was like him. Disanya, Ditani Rabbi Oshia, Yisrael Sheshachah Behemah Tamei Lavik Chacham. Here we go. A Yisrael shechts a non-kosher animal for an akum. Shachat Bashnaim Rav Shnayim. Ultimately, if he shechted two simanim, the majority of two simanim, umifarchases, and the animal is convulsing, mitame tumas ochlin, avalo tumas nevelos. So the animal is mitame tumas ochlin because the shchita makes the animal into food, but yet ultimately, because the convulsions are occurring, the animal is not yet dead. Because it's not yet dead, therefore it does not contract tumas nevelos. But watch this. Aver haporesh mimena. This is wild. If you take a limb from that convulsing animal, keporesh minachai. That limb is aver minachai. So we'll say, you understand how wild this is? So on one hand, I shechted it, so you're telling me it's ochel. But it's not yet dead because it's still convulsing. So because it's not yet dead, therefore what? If I take a limb from it, then what? It's aver minachai. Yet Rabosai, it contracts tumas ochlin, which means that it's ochel. So okay, hold on. Ubasar parishim and kibasar parish menachai, and flesh that is detached from it has the equivalent of flesh which is detached from a living animal. Va'aser libnei noach, and it becomes aser to bnei noach because bnei noach are aser for eivrim menachai. Va'afilu la'achar sheteitze nafsha. And I will say, the halach is, we actually saw this before. If you rip off a limb from a living animal, and I will say what happens, afterwards you shecht it, that limb does not become mutter after the fact, right? It's dead anyway. So what is it? So again, because once it has the identity of Avraham Menachai, it's the identity of Avraham Menachai. Now, we'll say. So remember again, what did you just see in that case? Now, the reason why the Gemara is quoting this case is because it seems to back up the position ultimately again of Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that an animal which is convulsing is subject to Avraham Menachai. Now, what I just want to point out over here is something absolutely dramatically, overwhelmingly amazing, which is, on one hand, we just said that once you shecht it, it contracts tumas ochlin. Yet, what did we just say? It contracts tumas ochlin, right? But yet, it's subject to Avraham Menachai if you were to go ahead and take meat from it. So just hold on to that inconsistency in your mind for just a moment. Shachad ba'echad or rov echad. On the other hand, I will say, remember, the Gemara is only bringing this up, this whole case, for one reason, which is that halacha l'maaseh backs up Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that an animal that is convulsing is subject to Avraham Menachai. The Gemara goes right. Shachad ba'echad or rov echad. If you shechted one simon, the majority of one simon, it does not metame tumas ochlin. So okay, so we'll say again, fine, which makes sense because the shechita of one simon is what? Is nothing. Is nothing. So because that we'll say, therefore again, the animal is alive. If it's alive, it's not metame tumas ochlin. Nachra, we'll say, what happens if you didn't shecht at all? You stabbed the simanim. You killed the animal some other way, right? Then what's the halacha? Ein ba tumas shel klum. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. So if you stab it, i.e. you don't shecht it, so ultimately again it's mefar cheses. So ultimately again, it's not metame at all. Obviously, once it dies, it'll be metame tumas nevela. But I will say it's only shchita. It's only shchita which allows an animal to contract tumas ochl. Otherwise, if you just kill it in some other way, it's not metame tumas ochlin. Va'ovid kochavim, conversely, sheshacha behema torah liyisrael. If an ovid kochavim goes ahead and checks a kosher animal for a Jew, umifar cheses, and the animal is convulsing, so we'll say, so what's the halacha? Metame tumas ochlin. So the shechita of the ovid kochavim also goes ahead and turns the animal into ochel. Therefore, again, the animal can contract tumas ochlin, avalo tumas nevela. But ultimately, again, not tumas levela. Evra porish yemena. If a limb comes off, if you take a limb off that animal, ke porish minachai. So we'll say same idea. If the limb is taken from a convulsing animal, that is called evra minachai. Ubasar porish yemena ke porish minachai. And ultimately, if flesh comes off that animal, it's considered to be basar minachai and aser. Va'aser libnei noach, and it's aser for Gentiles. Va'afilu la'achar sheteitze nafsha. And ultimately, again, even after the animal dies, shachad. We'll say this is just the inverse case. Shachad ba'echad or rov echad. We'll say this is a non-Jew shechting for a Jew. Shachat ba echad v'rov echad. If you non-Jew shechts one simon or majority of one simon, then I will say that's not a shechit at all. Therefore, what? Ein metame tumas ochlin. Ultimately, again, it's not metame tumas ochlin at all. First white line, nachra ein ba tumas shel klum. If you stab the animal, ultimately, again, no tuma at all. No tuma at all, because we'll say, now again, when we say no tuma at all, no tumas ochlin. Once it dies, we'll have tumas nevela. Now we'll say, now watch this. Shachat ovid kochav b'makom shein osa treifa. Here we go. If let's say an akum, we'll say, began to shecht the animal, but did so in a way that would not render the animal a treif. In other words, we'll say, which essentially means the akum did an insignificant shchita. Let's say we'll say the akum goes in and shechts less than half of the windpipe. Less than half of one of the simanim, which was halachically insignificant. And then what? Uba Yisrael the Gamra, and Yisrael comes along and finishes the shechita. What's the halacha? Kshera. Ultimately, the shechita is good. Shachat Yisrael bein b'makom she'osa osa treifa, bein b'makom she'en osa treifa. I'll become the Gamra. We'll say what happens if Yisrael begins the shechita in a significant or insignificant way, and what happens? The akum Uba become the Gamar, and the Ovikam comes along and he finishes it. Shechita sa psula. Ultimately, again, the shechita is not good. So we'll say these are halachas you've actually seen before. And we'll say, here we go. Let's say you, mamish, you're into fresh meat. So we'll say you want meat right after the shechita, and you don't want to wait until the animal stops convulsing. Who wants to wait until the animal stops convulsing to have lunch? We'll say, so what do? Here we go. Chotech kizayis basar mi beis hashchita. So we'll say, the way you do this is like this. You cut out a piece of meat from the neck. Now, what do you have to do over here? Umolcho yafe yafe medicho yafe yafe. Now, we'll say, now remember again, part of the way in which blood comes out of the body is through shechita. When you shecht, the animal's final life force pushes blood out of the body. If you're taking a piece of meat out of the neck while the animal is still bleeding out, so then the halacha is you have to salt it especially well. So you have to salt it very well, wash it off very well. But I will say the halacha is you have to wait until the animal stops convulsing to eat it. So you could have it on your plate. You could be ready to go, but you have to wait until the animal finishes convulsing. I will say we're going to see that is a din d'Rabbanan. Midoraisa, I want to just point out for a second, you already know the punchline to this. The punchline to this is once the animal is, we do not accept Chizkiya's view of three states, right? Of alive and dead, and we accept it and in between. We accept it hashkafically. We don't accept it halachically. So we'll say, so understand over here. So therefore, in our worldview, in our halacha, the halacha says that what? Once you check that animal, we'll say, what is that animal? What is it? It's dead. The only midrabanan we say we do not eat from a convulsing animal. That we don't do. So you could take the meat while the animal is convulsing. You could prepare the meat while the animal is convulsing. You just can't eat it. So you could have it on your plate. It's salted, ready to go. But midrabanan, you have to wait until the animal stops convulsing in order to eat it. This is actually amazing. This halach applies to Jew and non-Jew alike. We'll say, why do I have to wait midrabanan until after the animal stops convulsing? What am I concerned about? What might it look like? Avram and Achai. And since Avram and Achai applies to Jews and non-Jews, I both say this halacha waiting to animal stops convulsing before you eat it applies to Jews and non-Jews alike. Misayir of Idi Baravin. Both say this verse of Idi Baravin. One more line. Don't Rav Idi Baravin. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Asher Harotze Shiyavri. If someone wants to be very healthy, Chotech Kizayis Basri Mesa Shchito Mocha Yafa Yafa Umadicho Yafa Yafa Umamtin La'at Shetetzi Nafsha Echad Ove Kochavim VeEchad Yisamu Tarmo. So I will say apparently this was excellent for your health as well to eat a piece of this meat from the Beis HaShchita, salted very well, wash it very well, and ultimately, again, it'll be good for your health. We'll have to stop over here for today. We'll pick up with Rabbi Elazar tomorrow.